I was halfway through my shift on Thanksgiving Day when my phone buzzed. It was a text from my daughter. Just one sentence. "We gave your room to the pastor." At first, I thought it was a joke. I even chuckled under my breath, imagining her trying to be funny. But then, I noticed the lack of emojis, the absence of her usual playful tone. It was just flat. Cold. My stomach tightened. My room? The place where I keep every piece of my life, every photo, every memory? Given away? And to the pastor? I stared at the message, my fingers frozen over the keyboard I was using at work. The hum of the machines around me faded into a low, dull buzz. My mind was already somewhere else, in my own house, picturing strangers opening my closet, touching the framed photos on my dresser. Why the pastor? Why on Thanksgiving? And why didn't they ask me first? For the next few minutes, I couldn't focus. I read the message over and over like maybe the words would rearrange themselves, offer some kind of clue. But no, same 7 words, same punch in the gut. We had a pastor in our lives for a while now. Friendly, charismatic, always smiling. But something about him didn't sit right with me. The way he lingered in conversations, how he seemed to know just a little too much about our private business. And now, apparently, he was sleeping in my bed. I glanced at the clock. I had hours left in my shift, but the questions were chewing at me like termites through wood. Had something happened? Was someone hurt? Or was this exactly what it sounded like, them replacing me with him, even just for a night? My chest tightened with a strange mix of anger and fear. I could feel my pulse in my ears. Every minute I stayed here, something inside me screamed that I was making a mistake. I didn't know it yet, but leaving work early would set off a chain of events that changed the way I looked at my family forever. And when I walked through that door, let's just say, the truth was a whole lot worse than I imagined. Thanksgiving has always been a tricky holiday for my family. Some years it felt warm, full of laughter, the smell of turkey and cinnamon pies drifting from the kitchen, my wife humming along to old Motown records. Other years, well, let's just say we all counted the hours until it was over. The smallest comment could ignite a silent standoff that lasted until New Year's. This year, I was stuck on the holiday shift. I work in retail, and if you've ever worked retail on a big holiday, you know the drill. Shoppers in a frenzy, carts jammed in the aisles, everyone convinced their needs are more urgent than the person before them. The constant ding of the register, the polite but strained "have a great holiday" over and over until it loses all meaning. It wasn't the first time I'd had to work on Thanksgiving, but it still stung. My daughter, Emily, is 17 now, and I'm painfully aware that we don't have many more of these holidays together before she's off building her own life. Missing another Thanksgiving dinner wasn't just missing turkey, it was missing those moments that don't come back. The little things, her rolling her eyes at my bad jokes, the way she sneaks extra mashed potatoes before dinner's ready, the sound of her laughing with her cousins. We'd had some tension in the house lately. Not shouting matches, just absence. Emily had been spending more time at church youth events, coming home later, talking less. My wife, she's always been deeply involved in the church, but lately, it was almost like the church was her second home. And that's where the pastor came in. Pastor Daniel. On the surface, Daniel was the kind of man people trusted instantly. Neatly trimmed beard, sharp but casual clothes, warm handshake, and this way of looking at you like you were the only person in the room. He knew how to make people feel important. But I couldn't ignore the small things, the way his questions about my schedule seemed casual, but too specific. The way he lingered after events, talking to my wife in hushed tones. The way his sermons started leaning into topics about male leadership and when a father isn't present. A few weeks before Thanksgiving, I overheard Emily in her room, phone pressed to her ear, whispering, "Don't tell Dad yet, he won't get it." I froze outside the door for a second, trying to piece together who she was talking to, but I didn't hear much else. At the time, I brushed it off. Teenagers have their secrets, and I didn't want to be the parent who interrogates every word. But now, That moment was replaying in my mind like a flashing warning light. Thanksgiving morning, I left the house before sunrise. The street was quiet, frost crunching under my shoes, my breath visible in the cold air. I glanced back at the dark windows, wondering what the day would look like without me there. The air felt heavy, like the pause before a storm breaks. At work, I kept telling myself it was fine. They'd have dinner, save me a plate, I'd be home late but still catch the tail end of the evening. But little things gnawed at me. My wife hadn't packed me any food, not even a sandwich, something she always did on long shifts. No note. No quick text to say we'll miss you. Just silence. And Emily, she'd been unusually quiet the day before. No pleading for me to try to get the day off, no complaints, just a distant okay when I told her I'd be gone most of the day. It was like she'd already adjusted to the idea of me not being there. Then there was Daniel. I'd seen him more in the last month than in the last year combined. He'd stopped by the house twice when I wasn't home, just checking in, my wife said. I tried to believe her. I tried to tell myself it was nothing. But deep down, I had the gnawing feeling that the man was slipping into spaces where I belonged. So when that text came through later that day, it wasn't just a surprise. It was confirmation. The puzzle pieces I'd been ignoring suddenly snapped into place. And the picture they made? It didn't feel like home anymore. When the text came through, it was almost noon. I'd been trying to lose myself in work, ringing up purchases, answering questions, pretending that the holiday didn't matter. But the second I saw Emily's name pop up on my phone, I stopped mid-sentence with a customer. 7 words. We gave your room to the pastor. It didn't come with an explanation, no follow-up text, no haha, just kidding. Just that. I must have read it 10 times in a row. My first reaction was disbelief, some weird teenage prank, maybe. Emily had a sarcastic streak, and maybe she thought she was being clever. But even as I tried to laugh it off, my chest tightened. My room wasn't just a place to sleep. It was my space. My clothes, my books, the old photos I'd never gotten around to putting in albums. A drawer with birthday cards Emily had made me when she was little. The worn leather Bible my dad left me. The thought of anyone, especially Daniel, walking into that room, touching my things, made my skin crawl. I tried calling her. No answer. I sent a text back, "What are you talking about?" No reply. That's when the unease started to grow claws. It wasn't just about the room. It was about why my daughter, on Thanksgiving, would send me that without context. And it was about him. Daniel had been weaving his way into our family for months. At first, I told myself I was imagining it, that it was just what pastors do, being friendly, making house calls, checking in on members of the congregation. But there was a difference between checking in and making yourself at home. I remembered a Sunday afternoon 2 weeks earlier. I'd walked in the front door after a short shift, and there he was, sitting at my kitchen table, coffee in hand, chatting with my wife like he lived there. I remember his eyes flicking to me, just for a second, before he smiled and said, "Oh, I didn't realize you'd be home so soon." His tone was light, but there was something in the way he said it, like he was more surprised than he should have been. Another memory surfaced, one I'd pushed aside. Last month, at a church picnic, Daniel had taken Emily aside for what looked like a serious conversation. I'd walked over to check in, and his tone instantly changed to cheerful small talk. Later, Emily brushed it off, saying they were talking about youth group stuff. I wanted to believe her, but the way she avoided eye contact told me there was more to it. Now I was supposed to believe that, on the one day I couldn't be there, they'd just given him my room? I tried to keep working, but I was useless. Every time I scanned an item, my mind replayed different scenarios. Maybe there was some emergency, maybe his house had flooded, or he was stranded. But then I'd think about all the little red flags, Emily's secretive phone calls, my wife's long conversations with him, the way he seemed to know my schedule down to the hour. My hands were trembling as I stocked a shelf, and a coworker asked if I was okay. I mumbled something about low blood sugar, but inside, I was spiraling. I imagined Daniel going through my dresser drawers, finding the watch my father gave me before he passed away. I imagined him lying back on my pillow, the same pillow I'd slept on the night before. I imagined my wife letting him stay, maybe even welcoming it. The longer I stood there, the more the embarrassment crept in. What would people think if they knew? If my own family was replacing me, even for a night, with another man, a pastor, no less? By 12:30, I'd made up my mind. I wasn't going to wait until my shift ended. I clocked out, ignoring the manager's glare, and walked to my car. My hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped my keys. The drive home wasn't long, but it felt endless. I gripped the steering wheel tighter than I needed to, my knuckles whitening with every mile. My mind kept flipping between confrontation and caution. Would I walk in and demand answers right there in front of everyone? Or would I quietly pull Emily aside first, get her version of the story before things exploded? I didn't know. All I knew was that with every turn of the wheels, the pit in my stomach grew heavier. Part of me still hoped it was nothing, a misunderstanding, maybe even a joke gone wrong. But another part of me, the part that had been quietly collecting warning signs for months, knew better. Whatever I was about to walk into, it was going to change things. The engine roared to life, but I barely heard it over the pounding in my ears. My hands were tight on the steering wheel, fingers digging into the leather. I pulled out of the parking lot and onto the nearly empty road, the gray November sky hanging low, heavy with clouds. It was strange, the roads were almost deserted, as if the whole world was inside their warm houses, carving turkey and passing mashed potatoes. Meanwhile, I was driving home to God knows what, my mind a carousel of questions that had no answers. Every mile seemed to drag me deeper into my own head. Memories kept surfacing, little snapshots from the past year that I had filed away as odd but not worth dwelling on. Like the time in spring when Daniel had stopped by to drop off a book for Emily. I was home that day. He'd seemed almost startled to see me, holding the book in both hands like a peace offering. "It's about leadership," he'd said, giving me that trademark warm smile. "Good read for young people." Emily had thanked him quickly, ushered him out, and later tucked the book away in a drawer. I found it weeks later, unopened. Then there was the summer barbecue. Our backyard full of neighbors, kids running around with sparklers, the smell of grilled chicken in the air. Daniel had shown up uninvited, or maybe invited by my wife without telling me. He'd spent most of the afternoon talking to Emily and my wife in a tight little circle, only breaking away to greet others briefly. At the time, I told myself I was overthinking it. After all, he was the pastor. Wasn't he supposed to connect with people? But the one memory that kept coming back was much smaller, almost trivial. It was a Wednesday night, mid-September. I'd been working late. When I got home, the house was quiet except for faint music coming from the kitchen. Daniel's voice floated through the air, low and even, like he was telling a story. I walked in to find him at the table with my wife and Emily, 3 mugs of tea in front of them. They stopped talking the moment they saw me. My wife had smiled, said, "Oh, Daniel just dropped by after Bible study. He left within 2 minutes." That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, wondering what conversation I had interrupted. Now, with Emily's text still burning a hole in my phone, all those moments were lining up like dominoes. The closer I got to home, the more the air inside the car seemed to thicken. My thoughts swung between anger and a kind of bone-deep sadness. Anger, because if this was what it looked like, I had been cut out of my own family's decisions. Sadness, because if I was right, this was more than just a bad choice, it was a breach of trust that wouldn't be easy to repair. I played out the moment in my head over and over, me walking in, everyone looking up in shock, Daniel standing there. Would I demand he leave immediately? Would I pull Emily into another room and try to get her to talk? Or would I just stand there, too stunned to speak? My mind kept drifting to Thanksgiving itself. This was supposed to be a day of family, of gratitude, of connection. Instead, here I was, driving toward a confrontation that could shatter the whole thing. I thought about the dinner table I might not even be invited to sit at when I got home. A part of me considered just not going home yet, driving somewhere else, cooling down before I walked through the door. But that thought was smothered instantly by the image of Daniel settling in for the night, maybe even unpacking a bag, making himself comfortable in my space. I tightened my grip on the wheel. No. I needed to be there. I needed to see it with my own eyes. As I turned down our street, my heart rate kicked up. The houses were glowing warmly, families gathered inside. Ours looked no different from the outside, lights on, silhouettes moving in the kitchen window. But it didn't feel like home anymore. Not until I knew what I was about to find. I pulled into the driveway slower than usual, gravel crunching under the tires like a warning. The porch light pooled yellow across the steps. From the street the house looked right. Inside me, everything felt wrong. I didn't call or text. I wanted the truth the way it was, not the way it sounds when people have time to prepare. I killed the engine, stepped into the cold, and fit my key into the lock. The click felt too loud. Warmth met me in the entryway. Voices drifted from the hall, my wife's low, steady tone, and Daniel's measured reply. I moved forward until the living room opened in front of me. Emily looked up from the couch, eyes wide. Down the hallway, our bedroom door stood open, light pooling across the floorboards. Daniel stood inside my room holding a stack of my shirts. A small suitcase lay half-zipped on my side of the bed. He looked at me with no surprise. "Hey," he said, easy as a grocery store hello. "Didn't know you'd be home so soon." My wife appeared behind him. "You're home early," she said. "We didn't think, what is this?" The words jumped out sharper than I meant. Emily stood in the doorway, arms folded tight. My wife glanced at Daniel, then back to me. "It's not what you think." "It looks exactly like what I think," I said, stepping into the doorway. "He's in my room, touching my things. On Thanksgiving, while I'm at work." Daniel set the shirts down carefully. "I was going to stay one night. There's a situation at my place." "What situation?" "Burst pipes," he said after a beat. "Water damage." I didn't want to intrude. "Your wife offered." I turned to her. "Without asking me?" "You weren't here," she said. "It was an emergency." "An emergency that required my bed?" "We didn't move you out," she said. "We just made space." I looked around. Drawers stood cracked open. My watch box had been shifted. The framed wedding photo that always sat on the nightstand was face down. In the bathroom, a toothbrush I didn't recognize lay wet on the counter. "Made space," I echoed. "You cleared me." I looked at Emily. "You texted me." "You should know what's happening in your house," she said, voice steady but small. "Thank you," I said. Daniel lifted his hands slightly. "I don't want trouble. I'll be gone in the morning. I just need somewhere safe tonight." "Safe from what?" I asked. "Burst pipes?" He held my eyes. "From being alone." The bluntness threw me. My wife cut in. "He's been carrying a heavy load. People lean on him." We were trying to be kind. "Kindness sleeps on the couch," I said. "Kindness calls first. The couch is where you fall asleep after late shifts." "Because I'm working," I said. "For us." I raised a hand. "Don't." I crossed to the dresser. My shirts were pressed to the side to make a neat gap. In the closet, 2 storage bins were missing, a duffel I didn't recognize sat in their place. "Who did this?" I asked. "I did," my wife said. "It was practical. It's one night." "Practical would have been a phone call," I said. "Not turning our room into a guest suite while I'm gone." "It's not your room," she snapped. "It's our room. And in our house, we help people." The words cut. I pointed to the face-down photo. "Then why is our picture turned over?" Silence. Daniel looked at the ceiling, Emily looked at the floor. I lifted the frame, then set it upright. You can have compassion without erasing me. Emily spoke quickly. Dad, he didn't have anywhere to go. I told Mom he could take my room, but the office is full of boxes and you offered your room? I asked gently. She hesitated. I did. Mom said this was better. It's closer to the bathroom, my wife said. He hasn't felt well. You keep saying we, I said. At what point does we include me? You weren't here, she said. I'm here now. That should have mattered in this decision tonight. Daniel cleared his throat. If it helps, I'll take the couch. You'll take your own house, I said. Or a hotel. Or a deacon's spare bed. Anywhere except my pillow. He nodded slowly. Understood. He closed the suitcase. Stop, my wife said, stepping between us. He stays tonight. We already settled it. You settled it without me. Every time there's a decision, you're gone, she said. Work has you. The church has us. Someone had to decide. There was truth in it, but not enough. I touched the wet toothbrush. In the trash sat an empty razor box and a crumpled wrapper from travel deodorant. Is this the first night? I asked. Emily glanced at her mother. Daniel looked at the floor. My wife's jaw tightened. How many nights? 2, she said. Counting tonight. The floor tilted. So last night, while I closed the store, he slept here. He needed rest, she said. I faced Daniel. Did you turn the photo? No, he said. Emily's words rushed out. I did. I didn't want him to feel weird. About what? I asked. Us in our room? I was trying to make it less awkward, she said. For him, I said. Not for us. I steadied my voice. Here's what happens now. He leaves the room. Couch or hotel. Tomorrow, we talk. He's not well, my wife said. Then urgent care, I said. But not here. Daniel zipped the suitcase, lifted it, and stepped past me. The sight of him crossing my doorway made something in me lurch. I turned to Emily. Thank you for texting me. Next time, sooner. I didn't know if you'd leave work, she said. For this, yes, I said. My wife stood still, arms crossed. He's on the couch. Are you satisfied? No, I said. Not close. I walked back into the hall and noticed a small brass key on the entry dish, one I didn't recognize. I picked it up. What's this? Daniel answered from the living room. Spare key to the church. Your wife picked it up in case someone needs to check the building after hours. I forgot to put it in my purse. You have the church's key, I said. He has space in my room. And I learned by text. You're gone too much, she said, softer now. And you filled the empty space, I said. She looked away. I set the key down and pulled the bedroom door nearly closed. We'll talk in the morning, I said, knowing morning would not be enough. Then I saw a small cardboard box under the bed, its lid ajar. I slid it out. Inside, my winter sweaters were stacked in neat folds. A label in my wife's handwriting read, Dad, closet. My breath left me. How many boxes? Silence. How many? 3, she whispered. 3 boxes of me, already packed. For a long second, nobody moved. Tomorrow, I said, level because it had to be, we're going to talk about those boxes. And for the first time that night, I saw fear cross the pastor's face. The next morning, the air in the house was heavy. The usual sounds of breakfast, the clink of dishes, the pop of the toaster, were missing. Instead, there was just the quiet hum of the refrigerator and the muffled shuffle of feet moving cautiously down the hall. I was already at the kitchen table when my wife walked in, still in her robe. She poured herself coffee without looking at me. Daniel's suitcase was gone from the living room, the couch cushions neatly fluffed. He'd slipped out before sunrise. Emily emerged a few minutes later, hair pulled back, eyes down. She sat across from me, wrapping her hands around a mug she didn't drink from. I didn't speak right away. I wanted to see who would break the silence first. It was Emily. "You're mad at me," she said quietly. "I'm not mad at you," I said. "I'm mad about what happened." "There's a difference." She nodded, but I could tell she didn't fully believe me. I turned to my wife. "I want you to tell me the real reason he was here. All of it." Her jaw tightened. "I told you, burst pipes, water damage," I cut her off. "And that's the whole truth?" She hesitated. Just a second too long. My gut twisted. "How long have you been planning for him to stay here?" Her eyes flicked toward Emily before she answered. "A week." Emily shifted uncomfortably. "A week?" I repeated. "You knew for 7 days and never mentioned it to me?" "I didn't think it mattered where he stayed for one night," she said. "One night," I said slowly, "that somehow turned into 2. And you cleared space in our room before Thanksgiving even arrived." Emily looked up sharply at that. "You told me it was last minute," she said to her mother. My wife's lips pressed into a thin line. "It was. Sort of." "Sort of?" I echoed. "So what's the sort of part?" "That's when the dam broke." She sighed heavily, set her mug down, and finally met my eyes. "Daniel's been having a hard time. Not just the pipes. He's been struggling. Some of the church board has been questioning his decisions. He didn't want to be alone for the holiday." "And that," I said, "makes this my problem." "How?" "Because we're supposed to be his friends," she said. "And you're never here." So I made a choice. The words hit harder than I expected. "I'm never here because I'm working. For this house. For you. For Emily." She didn't answer. Emily spoke up then. "I didn't want to tell you over text, but I thought if you knew, you'd come home." "I would have come home no matter what if I knew a grown man was moving into my room," I said. My wife bristled. "It's not your room, it's our room. And I don't appreciate you acting like you're the only one who gets to decide who stays here." "You're right," I said. "We're supposed to decide together." Which is exactly my point. For a moment, no one spoke. The only sound was the faint tick of the kitchen clock. Finally, I asked, "What are the boxes for?" She froze. "The ones under the bed," I continued. 3 boxes of my things, labeled. "Why?" Emily looked confused. "Boxes?" "They're just sweaters and some old stuff," my wife said quickly. "Labeled," I repeated. "Like they're ready to be moved." She took a deep breath. "I thought about rearranging. Making a guest space. Just in case." "In case of what?" I asked. Her voice was quiet. "In case you stayed at the Stormore and needed your own place." The words hung between us. Emily stared at her like she didn't recognize her. I leaned back in my chair. So this wasn't about one night. This was about making room for him. "No," she said quickly. "It's not like that." Emily's voice trembled. "Then what is it like, Mom?" "Because it doesn't look good." My wife's shoulders slumped. "Daniel's wife left him 2 months ago. The church is divided. He's been leaning on me for advice. I didn't mean for it to get this complicated." I stared at her. "And you didn't think I should be part of that conversation?" "I didn't want you to overreact," she said. I almost laughed. Overreact? This is me underreacting. Emily set her mug down hard. "You should have told Dad. Both of you are acting like strangers." That stung more than anything else. For the first time, my wife's voice softened. I'm sorry. I should have told you. I just didn't want to ruin the holiday. I shook my head. The holiday was ruined the moment I got that text. No one spoke after that. The truth was out, but it didn't feel like a relief. It felt like the first crack in something that had been solid for years. And I wasn't sure it could be fixed. The conversation in the kitchen hadn't solved anything. If anything, it left us all raw, edges exposed, trust frayed. By mid-afternoon, the quiet in the house was suffocating. I was in the living room, trying to read, but the words on the page wouldn't stick. Emily sat on the opposite couch, scrolling aimlessly through her phone. My wife moved around the kitchen in silence, opening and closing cabinets without purpose. Then, the doorbell rang. I knew before I opened it who it would be. Daniel stood there, hat in hand, his expression a careful mix of humility and resolve. I came to apologize, he said. I stepped aside, but only enough to keep the cold air from rushing in. Say it from here. He looked past me into the living room, saw Emily watching, my wife frozen in the kitchen doorway. I'm sorry for crossing boundaries, he began. I should have asked you directly before staying here. I let my own problems make me careless. I crossed my arms. And the boxes? He blinked. Boxes? You mean you didn't know? I asked. His brow furrowed. No. I didn't ask her to make space for me. That small piece of information shifted something, not enough to erase the damage, but enough to redirect some of the anger. My wife spoke then, voice trembling. I thought I was helping. I didn't think about how it would look. I just wanted to be there for him. I didn't mean to push you out. I let the words hang in the air. Intentions don't erase actions. Daniel stepped back. I'll stay away for a while. Give you space. Do that, I said. When the door closed, I turned to my wife. Here's what's going to happen. No more unannounced guests in our room. No more decisions this big without both of us. And no more secrets. She nodded, but her eyes were wet. I understand. Emily set her phone down. And maybe we can eat together tonight? Just us. No guests. The suggestion was so simple, so normal, that for a moment I wanted to believe it could fix things. All right, I said finally. Just us. We sat down to dinner later that evening, nothing fancy, just reheated turkey and mashed potatoes. The food was fine, but the conversation was stilted. Every laugh felt forced, every silence felt loaded. I knew it would take more than one dinner to repair what had cracked. But at least, for that night, the pastor wasn't in my seat. That night, when the dishes were done and the house was quiet, I sat alone in the living room. The hum of the refrigerator and the faint ticking of the wall clock were the only sounds. I thought about how easily trust can be stretched thin, not with one big betrayal, but with small decisions made in closed rooms. You think you have time to fix it, until one day you realize the foundation has shifted. Emily's text had hurt. The sight of Daniel in my room had cut deep. But what haunted me most wasn't the pastor, or even the boxes under the bed. It was knowing my own family had made space for someone else without making space for me in the conversation. We'd eat more dinners together. We'd talk more, or at least, that's what I hoped. But I knew it wouldn't be the same as before. Some things you can patch. Some you can only live with. And if there's one thing I learned this Thanksgiving, it's this: guard your place in your family. Because once you give it away, getting it back is a whole lot harder. If this story hit you, subscribe for more.